So I offer mental health first aid training, similar to a CPR course. We do provide certificates for individuals who participate in our training. I've been in the mental health profession and in the helping profession well over 20 years. I've worked with different populations, applicants applying for food stamps and Medicaid. I've worked with the Department of Aging and Disability, DADS. I've done my time with CPS, Child Protective Services, and even with foster care services. And so I've come full circle because now I work with mental health. I used to work in the clinic with families and youth on managing and coping and understanding their mental health challenges. And now I am wanting to bring that awareness to our communities because mental health is really, it affects all of us, right? And so we want to make sure that we make everybody aware of how mental health can affect us. And we're going to jump into more information about that. I do believe we should be able to talk about mental health. So today we're going to talk about stress. We're going to learn what stress is and the different types of stress and about this stress cycle that we do need to process and go through. And then we'll talk about mental health and what that looks like. And then we're going to close our time together with a discussion of self-care, because that is one of the new things that we're pushing when it comes to mental health. Self-care. It's important that we're able to take care of ourselves so we can be better prepared to handle whatever comes our way. So stress. For some of the things, and I'm going to refer to my notes to make sure I cover everything. So not only does stress impact our mental health, but it also affects our physical beings, right? When we encounter something that gives us stress, and we'll talk about what those things are, we feel it throughout our bodies, right? Some of us, our heartbeat starts racing, right? Some of us may get clammy and sweaty and oh my goodness. Some of us may even need to step away, get out of the group and everything to kind of process what is going on. And so can stress be good?
No.
No?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. In some instances, stress can be good. It's a motivator.
Yes.
Are you all students here?
Yes.
Yes. So when you worry about that paper or that exam, that's stress, right? And you guys do what you need to do to prepare for that, right? So that kind of helps minimize our stress. And then we ace the exam or we ace the paper or we just complete the assignments, right? So that's good stress. Good stress feels manageable, motivating, and exciting. And it comes in challenging but enjoyable ways, right? And we call that eustress. 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 So that's a good stress. Stress can be healthy. It increases our response system. It makes us alert. It makes us aware. It even promotes our immunity, right? So we can fight off viruses and everything. So it releases all these hormones and chemicals within our bodies that are natural to help improve that physical wealth, right? Now let's talk about distress. Distress is the bad stress. This is the negative one. Bad stress feels overwhelming, exhausting, and can have negative consequences on physical and mental health. So bad stress really gets that body response, right? And it can be overwhelming. It tenses our muscles. Okay, my glass, I have to accept the fact that I need glasses, right?
Yeah.
So when bad stress really affects us, long term can really have an impact on our health. It can really shorten our life, right? Because that promotes illnesses like high blood pressure, heart disorders, right? There are many things that can impact that come from distress. So it's important to be able to distinguish what is eustress and what is distress, right? It's if distress is left unchecked, we can have long-lasting impacts on our physical and mental well-being. So stress is not avoidable, but it is manageable, right? So we'll keep that in mind. So what causes stress? All of you sitting here, what are some of the things that give you stress?
Deadlines.
Deadlines, work,
Children.
Family.
children, family.
Worry,
What kind of worry? What do you worry about?
not being on time or not doing something on time.
Running late, missing
Being pressured
assignments?
into doing something that you most likely don't want to do,
Mhm.
but you're expected to do it. And if the minute you mess up, well, the minute you mess up, you are immediately judged and
So-
condemned.
Stress is a lot of fear. It's a fear of the uncertainty, yes.
Stress and PTSD.
Stress and PTSD, yeah, post-traumatic stress disorder. So some stress can lead to having mental health disorders,
What
right?
about tiredness? Like
Tiredness,
feeling cranky, feeling tired because you didn't get enough sleep can contribute to stress.
yeah, that falls under the other factors. We have external factors that create stress. Finances, work, school, relationships, right? Then we have internal factors that create stress. The perception of our control, the way we view why certain things happen. Sometimes we stress ourselves. Have we ever heard that? Oh, you're just stressing yourself. You're worrying about something that's nothing. Well, that's our internal factor. That's what we do. Our personality probably gears us to that. Thinking negatively, always preparing for the worst, right? And we know some of those people. And then, of course, you have the other factors. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, then that compounds your stress. And so these are the things that are stressors. So 4 things that we need to actually be aware of when it comes to stress is there is a difference between stress and stressor, right? Stress is how we respond. Stressor is what makes us respond. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, number 2, emotions have a beginning, middle, and end. This idea simply means that we have emotional experiences and we have to go through them, right? From the conception to the eventual resolution, we follow a natural, predictable path. Think of a wave, right? You know how the ocean rolls up with waves? If you try to fight it, it keeps knocking you down. But if you ride the wave, right, it gets to your destination. And what happens at the end of the wave? It's calm, right? You settle down, you land on the shore, on the beach, and everything's nice and calm and relaxing. Well, that is how our body responds. Number 3, just because the stressor is gone doesn't mean the stress is gone. Those are 2 different things. So maybe we turned in the assignment, we completed the deadline, but somehow that stress is still there. And so we need to be able to be aware of that. And then number 4, the last thing about stress is you need to complete the stress response cycle. So what is the stress response cycle? Excellent question. I'm going to show you. So the stress response cycle, no matter what causes the stress, many people deal with a stressful situation and will go through the stress response cycle. So here you see the image. We've got the external stressors. We've got the compounded stress, what we feel. And then, of course, those internal stressors that may contribute to that situation. Well, we get to the alarm stage. This is the initial stage when the body perceives a threat. And that nervous system releases all these chemicals and hormones that puts us into the fight, flight, or freeze, right? The 3 Fs. We either do one of those. Depending on who we are, how we do things, that's going to determine which one we do. And of course, what is the threat? The body prepares for action by increasing your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your respiration. So that's your alarm stage. From there, we get to the resistance stage. If the stressor persists, the body enters the resistance stage. This uses energy to cope with the stressor, potentially leading to the development of more resilient coping mechanisms. So this is our body working towards how do we deal with this? How do we handle the stress, the stressor? How do we cope with all of that? And then, of course, we get to the exhaustion stage. Because if we cannot manage and cope with these stressors, our body keeps repeating. If we feel that the stressor or the threat is still there, our body will keep repeating and keeps going through that cycle, and we get exhausted, right? Our broadband, you know that broadband is a term that we use, we can't handle anymore. We're in that state and we're getting overworked, we're getting overwhelmed, regardless of what is going on, right? So that's the cycle. And feelings are tunnels, and you have to go all the way through them to get to the light at the end.
I would like to say that what you described, the natural, what is it called?
The natural stress response cycle?
Everything you just said at the end, I just realized that's what happens to people with depression or major depression disorder.
Yeah, with any kind of stressor, regardless of what it is. Any stress that we feel, that's the response that our body goes through.
There are times where they just break down and start crying, and the next thing you know, they're fine.
Okay, thank you for asking or bringing that up, because there are ways to complete this cycle. There are certain things that we can do to finish and close that cycle. The thing is that a lot of times when we don't identify that there is stress or that there is like some distress and disorder, we tend to ping pong. We go from one issue to another issue, from one factor to another factor, and we never seem to process. And by the time we realize it, we're so overwhelmed with so many issues, so many triggers that were out there.
When I meant by fine, I didn't mean like, oh, I'm okay, fine. More like I'm not okay, fine. And I'm like, whatever. I feel sad, but whatever. I'm fine.
Thank you. So what was just described is sometimes we use different ways to cope with the stress, to cope with feeling certain ways. And some of them can be physical activity. You know, I'm one that I love to clean. When I get to that stress, when I feel that stress and the threat is no longer there, but I know I need to get through it, I pick a room in my house to deep clean. Right? Some people may cry because crying is one of the options. It's a release. Our bodies will find a way to release that stress. Did you have a question?
So when I would find a way to release stress, I would go to the gym. But since like for the past 3 weeks I haven't been, and like I've been really like just slammed with school, work, life, and like I haven't found a way to relieve the stress. How would I relieve it if the gym isn't an option for me?
And that's an excellent question, because one of the things we want to do is we want to find different ways. You know, yes, sometimes we have our preferred way, but life can be messy. So what are other things that you can do? What are you willing to do?
Work in the pantry.
Here's what I do to relieve stress. I play video games,
That might be a good one.
but the video games I prefer to be playing is correspond to my anger. So if I'm super angry out of stress, I prefer to be playing a video game that results in you, the player, to be murdering people.
Okay. You know, aggression can be expressed in many different ways. The important concept right there is that you're releasing something.
Yeah, just by
It is
killing
going
people,
out.
just by murdering people in video games, you're releasing anger and stress.
Mhm.
Mostly anger.
And you're not actually hurting an actual
Anybody.
person.
Right,
So-
it's just a game. It's just a video game.
Do it virtually so you want to do it in real life.
Kickboxing and boxing.
Boxing, yeah, those are excellent physical activities. You can punch, kick, run, whatever, even gardening. My son is more passive, he likes to garden. He likes to grow things, put things in order, get things into perspective. It's different for everybody. The key is that for you to find something that works for you. Because if you don't find something, you're gonna build up, and what happens when things build up and the pressure stays there?
There's an old saying that you get to the tip of your cup, it all thing just falls like an avalanche.
Like an
So
avalanche, yeah.
in this case,
You blow a gasket,
you throw a tantrum.
you can throw a
Sorry,
tantrum, and that might not be a manageable.
When like I was stressed, like the thing is like food is a comfort for me in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
but when I would consume too much, it kind of messes with my head a bit, and it adds more stress to what I want to be.
Yeah,
And like, because physical health is very important to me, and when I go to the gym, I release the dopamine, the stress. When time's very tough, and you don't have that time to go to that gym, when I try to find other ways to relieve that stress, my first thing is food, and it's caught up to me. And it
yeah.
puts me to more stress that the way I feel, my energy levels are like not as good as they should be, because I would be keep my my health on check. But when I eat certain foods like sugary, it gets me on a completed just downhill, and then I can't.
You'll crash, which might even complicate.
It causes
Yeah.
more stress for me, but I don't know how to relieve that.
And that's the thing, we need to find different ways, because when we experience mental health and stress, that affects our digestive system. I think nowadays, today, we're seeing that our health is really based on our digestion, right? What happens in here really affects what's going on out here. And so it's just a matter of being aware, changing some habits, find what is it you're eating? What are things that, these are just some of the adjustments you need to make, because sugar may not always be good.
Yeah, 'cause I'll cut that out for a very long time. I cut it out, and my energy levels were really good at one point, and then I just was on a steady decline with like timing, not going to the gym to release that stress, and just eating bad. Just kept it up to me. It feels good in the moment, but it would cause more stress later on for me, and I don't know how to.
Yeah.
It's just like a downhill for me.
My husband has the same thing, like when he has too much sugar, he just feels terrible, like.
Yeah, so sometimes it can be beneficial in small doses. Too much of a thing might not necessarily be the best. There are many simple ways that we can complete this cycle. You're gonna have to find your own way. And sometimes it's gonna be trial and error. What may work for one may not necessarily work for others. Those of you how many of you run and jog and just run it out?
I just want.
No.
Yeah, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that. I would
believe
not be able to
athletes can
survive
do
that. I think that would add more stress for me. So it's gonna be different for everybody. You need to find your way. What is the simple way to do it? So you have physical activity, you have creativity. Sometimes music, art pieces, journaling, that can be very different. Deep breathing. Deep breathing can be one of the most effective ones, and there's so many different techniques out there that can help you focus on your breathing. There's the, what is it called? The square breathing, right? You do 4 inhale, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you inhale, and you just keep going. There's even one that you do 7 inhale, you do 4 inhale, the seconds, and then you hold it for 7 seconds. Then you slowly exhale it for 8 seconds. There's different ways. Find your patterns. What helps you? Breathing can be very effective. And then you have that physical affection, that social connection. We're human beings. When we're stressed, when we feel troubled, when we feel threatened, we tend to connect to one another. And so because those are things that makes us feel safe or that we're not alone, right? So sometimes that might be, who would you go to? Crying. Crying was another way to get out that stress for the body to release. And then resting, I'll be with you in one moment. Resting, that goes back to eating well. Are we sleeping well? Sometimes we have hard times, and I can tell you, resting, going to sleep and sleeping it off, I have gotten home having a bad day. It's 2 o'clock and I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to take a power nap.
Okay.
I take my power nap and I will have you, sometimes my body regenerates so much that by the time I wake up, it's already evening. I didn't have to cook dinner. I think I planned it all along.
I think that's a good stress relief.
I think I planned it all along. But rest, sometimes your body's gonna tell you, hey, and rest can be a good thing. Laughter, right? Sometimes laughter can help release all of that. And sometimes we laugh and cry at the same time, right? The thing is that we're releasing that stress. And then, of course, having that positive social interaction, being supportive. And this is why it's very important to spread this awareness about mental health, to know how does stress affect us, because we could be the people responding to these individuals. So we can be that positive social interaction. Does that make sense? You had a question. Or a
So
statement.
what advice would you give to say veterans who have been out of the military for a while and missed that whole battle police structure? What advice would you give for that?
So I don't give advice, but I would encourage individuals, veteran population, connect with other veterans. We've got, learn what resources are available. We've got Bring Everyone Into the Zone in Killeen, Beats. They're there to support veterans. You've got your VA hospital. You've got a lot of other local mental health or mental health authorities that are here and present. So find out what's available in your community.
Oh, yeah.
Have that conversation. There's so many programs for veterans and mental health disorders or mental health challenges. So I would encourage to find out what's available and have that conversation.
You can also connect with our Veterans Affairs Department, and they can
Yeah,
connect you with others.
Any questions on stress?
Yes. Another way, it's not really a good way on releasing stress, but it can work. Who's laughing?
No.
Okay. Temper tantrums are a way to relieve stress, or what some people prefer to call them meltdowns, or there's some people that say they're two different things. I say they're the same thing,
Okay.
just different wording.
Okay.
So when you have a meltdown or temper tantrum, you're releasing pheromones. You are releasing bottled up anger inside that's been holding you basically inside your stomach for however long, and it's good to just release.
Yeah. And that's the whole purpose of completing that cycle.
But I don't understand why so many doctors in the mental health community say you shouldn't do that when it actually helps your mental health. I believe those who say you can't do that or you should find an alternative way because it doesn't suit us normal individuals socially, I believe it's very stigmatizing, or in autistic perspective, ableist to say.
Okay, we'll talk about stigma and we'll come back to that. Thank you for bringing that up because we will talk about that. So stress, we talked about stress, the different types of stress and completing that cycle. So how does stress relate to your mental health? Do we all have mental health?
Anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah. This might encourage or put us at risk of having mental health challenges, right? Because I asked earlier, do we all have mental health?
I have several mental health issues.
Yeah. And sometimes mental health is not an issue. Mental health can be healthy. All of us experience mental health. Some of us have positive mental health. Some of us may experience challenges.
Well,
Some of us may even have the diagnosis to where we need to talk to professionals and seek out treatment. So mental health varies and it's different for everybody. The thing is that stress can affect our mental health. And that's important because mental health is how we determine our abilities, right? If we have good mental health, if we're positive, hey, we'll be making good decisions. We'll be able to take on the stress, the typical stress that comes in life. Remember when we talked about stress, we talked about relationships, work, school. Those stressors don't go away. But how we handle that stress really links up with our mental health, right? So having positive mental health is that state in which we're able to recognize our own abilities, what I can and cannot do, what our limits are. We can cope with the normal stresses of life. Yes, we've got exams coming up and but I have the skills and the knowledge to get through that. And we get to the next task. We can do work productively and fruitfully. We enjoy what we do. We find some sense of accomplishment in our tasks. And then we can contribute to our communities. We can be part of this circle and be supportive of one another, right? There are so many things that we can do when our mental health is in a good state of well-being. But sometimes mental health can be challenging. Some of us may not be able to cope with the normal daily stressors, right? And we see that with everybody, and it's different. But here's the thing, that stigmatism is there. What are some other stigmas that we know of it?
Ableism,
Ableism? Explain that one. What do you mean by
prejudice
that?
towards people who are mentally disabled.
Okay, yeah,
For some reason, I don't know why it has its own wording away from stigma. I don't know why it's a different definition.
okay.
It's literally the same thing, but on a different scale.
Of like personality disorders.
Personality disorders? Okay, when we talk about stigma, we talk about the negative attitude that people have. We have negative attitudes, we view mental health challenges differently. We view the people that have mental health challenges very differently. We treat them different. Maybe we don't connect with them. Maybe we don't want to handle them. And I'll give you an example. My neighbors, I have some neighbors that are very loud. They're always arguing and yelling. And that kind of makes us pause, right? And so in one occasion, I was able to speak with them and find out, get to know them a little bit better. Well, I learned that the husband has dementia. So that can be very challenging. And I also learned that one of the older sons has mental health issues because he's having difficulty seeing his father in that state. And of course, mom is really trying to make everything work and learning how to navigate with all these changes that are coming, right? So knowing that, I tend to respond differently. I'm not thinking, oh my goodness, somebody call the police, right? Now, if I hear something, I'm thinking, oh my God, is everybody okay? Right? And so one day I got a phone call from my son because we have, cameras, we have security and everything. And he tells me, Mom, you need to check the side camera, something's going on, I need to call the police and everything. And I go, whoa. It's okay. Has it calmed down? Yeah, it's calmed down. Okay, we'll talk about it when I get home. So I get home and my son's upset because that's ridiculous. How do people behave that way? They're so loud. I didn't know who was going to hurt and the dog did this. And then I sat my son down and I told him, Mijito, this is what's going on. His whole attitude changed, right? It's having that empathy, that understanding, not necessarily treating them different. So we have to be aware of that. And one of the awareness that I bring when it comes to mental health is reducing that stigma. How do we reduce that stigma? We use our voices. We talk and we tell people what we don't like or what is okay. But the other thing is that we also need to be aware that not everybody's going to see things our way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want
So
to say,
sometimes we need to be, when we talk about how we express our aggression or our stress, well, how does that affect others? Is it going to be safe? And I'm thinking maybe doctors might say you shouldn't have a tantrum or you shouldn't turn to aggression, because what can come out of that? We can hurt someone, and we didn't mean to hurt someone, right? Or somebody's gonna see it very differently and be concerned. Or you might get hurt yourself.
You might hurt yourself too.
So when we talk about finding ways to cope with our stress, do what works for you. But if it can put you at risk of something else, try to find something else that's better. You that you eat sugar. I don't know. Sugar might not be the thing to go to. Some of us use food. We may need to change something, right?
I'm-
And it can be a number of things.
I'm going to suggest something that I don't think everybody will agree with, but I think it would significantly help all mental health communities in today's age. I know there's been some progress when spreading mental health awareness on all fronts, but I don't think it always works. So I don't really believe that going, just kindly speaking or sending flyers or just talking, just doing nothing but talking is really gonna get people to agree. They might agree, but there's a large number of people who are aware but don't care. So
And that's true too.
personally, the only way that you're really gonna make real change is not through awareness campaigns, but through action, which is enforcement. Change in law and policy and restricting stigma, opinions, and behaviors through law enforcement and government censorship.
Okay.
I think if the mental health community did that more often, we see real progress. I wish the autism community did something like that.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your opinion, but and I do appreciate that. But not everybody thinks the same way, and it's really hard to generalize certain opinions to big populations because everybody's different. And I've been in this field for over 20 years, and I will tell you, awareness, having this discussion does encourage people to learn. And you're right, there are some people that just don't care. And that's okay.
Not until it affects them.
Not until it affects them. But when we have this conversation, then you brought up a very good point. Structural stigma, the policies and the procedures, the laws that get passed, they can be challenging and they can be contributing to stigma. Stigma makes symptoms work, and stigma keeps people from getting that help. So when we talk about mental health, what are some of the words we hear being used in our communities?
You're crazy.
You're crazy. Yeah. How many of us want to be on that crazy train? I don't. Woo.
I'm just kidding.
Some people don't want to be affiliated with that. So it starts with us. You talked about action. Well, let me ask, how many of us are willing to change the language that we use? And it's not as easy as it sounds. Because I'm going to tell you, I've got younger brothers, and sometimes they come
I
to me
forgot
with
to
some
raise my hand.
discussions, you know, and it's kind of like, sometimes I want to tell them, ay, Marco, estás bien chisqueado. You know, how many of us have siblings that sometimes we just say, oh my God, that sounds so crazy. You're being ridiculous. Grow up, right?
Mhm.
But what if something is going on? What if there is an issue? You know, that's when we follow that rule that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right? And we have to be mindful of the faces we make. We have to be mindful of the expressions that we use. But we also need to be mindful that maybe some people just don't know. And that's why it's important to have these discussions. And as we have these discussions, maybe we can get people to start thinking about making those changes.
Honestly, real change isn't gonna come through this rate, and I'm sorry. Honestly, if you want stigma to stop completely, you're gonna have to force it to stop.
I feel like this is an action though, like educating is
Mhm.
power, or education, knowledge is power.
Right.
So, I mean, it is an action in of itself to educate people about mental illness.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's not just awareness.
Right. It's letting people know what the tools are. It's letting people know what the issues are. And it's being able to have this discussion. And it does make an impact. It does bring on change.
What I'm saying actually has worked before in the past. It stopped segregation and racism in the 50s. And it had a huge impact up to now. Now almost everybody never discriminates Black people.
So that's going into a whole other subject, and I do appreciate your points of views.
It's a
And I
good comparison.
appreciate it's not a very good comparison because we're talking about two different things. And the thing is we do have laws. Stigma, we're talking about an attitude. We can't change people's attitude. That we can't force people to change people's attitudes. The beliefs, just like your opinions, you have your opinions. Others will have their opinions. The only way we can make change is if we sit down and have a conversation. Because just like you have a choice, earlier you mentioned expressing your anger in a certain way and how some people say that doesn't good. What if somebody were to force you to stop doing that? You think that would change it? Would that change?
I don't think it will now that you mention it.
Exactly. So when we say we just need to force people to think a certain way, people are they're not gonna be accepting of that either.
Force people to accept mental health.
Force people, you said stigma, to think, not to think
Not to think in a
negatively.
stigma way.
And
That's what
we're
I'm
working
saying.
on that, and stigma has changed, because these conversations are occurring more often. These presentations are rolling out, even more now than they did before.
I'm sorry,
Because
ever
people
since
are
I,
wanting-
ever
And
since,
I understand that, and I appreciate that, but I do want to get through our presentation and give the information that I do believe can
sorry,
help.
go ahead.
And then we can have this discussion after. But it's very hard to generalize and say, this is not gonna help. Maybe for you it won't, but for others it might. We're all very different. So we need to find our ways to change that conversation. What actions can we take to reduce that stigma? Language, how we treat others, right? When somebody's having a bad day, instead of telling them, stop it, maybe we need to, hey, take a step back and get help. Get other professionals that can be involved.
Majority, correct me if I'm wrong, but majority of stigma stems from ignorance,
It
and
does.
so.
Yeah.
With education, you're kind of directly tackling on stigma and of itself, because with force, you might just get the opposite. Yeah, you would just get pushback, and then people would just.
So
reject
forcing
it.
people to stop being stigmas or,
It
Stigmatized.
might actually make it even worse.
it might make it worse.
Yeah.
Exactly, they might get more stubborn about it and like really just set themselves in their beliefs because you're trying to push it on them.
Anything that you force on people is not gonna have a positive outcome.
I've been in life for 22 years and it feels like progress in any mental health feels kind of slow.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and
That's why I'm
because of
desperate for action.
Because of the structural stigma, funding that has now come into play, other discussions have come into play, beliefs have come into play. And so sometimes it feels like we need to start the conversation over. Because as we bring this awareness, yeah, we identify other things, other issues that we can certainly bring to the table and have a conversation. And the thing is that change is a slow process. Change doesn't happen overnight.
People don't like change.
And people don't like change. Exactly. So when we talk about the stigma and reducing that stigma, we want to consider that self-care, right? Because look at are you worked up having the conversation?
I
Do
didn't.
you feel? No.
I love
but-
debating, but I don't mean to come off as a jerk.
No.
Because I realize some
By all
people
means,
left
no.
the building because of me.
Yeah, no, they did not. And those are the self-thoughts, that's the stress. Sometimes we are who we are.
They might have had a class. Or
Yeah,
this
they
was
need to
a-
leave.
This was an employee, so she might just have to go
Yeah.
back to work.
Okay.
So, and that's another thing, perception. How do we view things? That contributes to that stress.
Internal stressors.
Internal stressors, thank you. Yes. So the conversations are always welcome, right? But sometimes we need to realize that change comes if you're willing to make those changes. Right? So self-care. Does anybody practice self-care?
At Marshall's every Saturday.
At Marshall's, so that would be retail therapy, right? What do you do for self-care?
I mean, everybody brushes their teeth, everybody showers.
You know what? That is very important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think of it as tasks, but sometimes if you do these things, this is what makes you feel good.
Uh,
Right?
With me, I'm sort of mixed in between when it comes to self-care, and I'm gonna be honest.
Mhm.
There's some things in self-care that I'm good at, and there's some things I'm not good at. I mean, I'm good at being clean,
Mhm.
and I'm really good at helping to fix or better my mental health.
Okay.
But there's one thing in the health field that I'm not good at involving self-care, and that's losing weight.
Sometimes challenges come in all different shapes and sizes, right?
And a lot of my need for obesity, the need to eat, kind of stems from mental health. Like,
Mhm.
he said that eating is a coping mechanism,
It can be.
and it can help relieve stress. Well, I'm sort of the same way when it comes to food.
Mhm.
I need to do it. I don't want to do it. I need to do it.
When it comes to self-care, sometimes we engage in things that may not be the best. It helps, but it may not be the best.
But it hurts you in the long run.
But if you're aware of it, that's the
already
big
a step.
step.
That's the first step, yeah.
That is the first step. If you are aware that, okay, I know this is my go-to, but it's really not working for me because I'm creating other problems elsewhere. Well, that's a good thing. You're ahead of the game. Because now you can start thinking, well, what else can I do? There are many ways that we can engage in self-care.
When I was a stay-at-home mom, it's silly, but just getting dressed for the day, instead of staying in like PJs or whatever, just getting dressed for the day would determine like so much of a better day. And it was something so small, and so I remember making that a priority to get up and put real people clothes on.
Those are the little things. Those are the little things, and those can make a huge difference. Even just going for a walk. You say, hey, this is my thing. Well, then you know what? Let me add some of this. Let me go out for a walk. Let me take a break. And it doesn't have to be a whole jog or a whole hour. You can break down your self-care in minutes at a time. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You know, sometimes we think of self-care that, oh, it's something you need to do every day. No, it doesn't have to be something you do every day. It just has to be something that helps recharge your battery.
I use video games as self-care.
Yeah.
It makes me not think about work or school or anything. It just kind of gives me a chance to chill.
Yeah.
I like to play more like open world. Maybe not, actually, Harry Potter, the Legacy one, you don't get to murder people in that one.
I figured.
Actually, you do, but it's like goblins and stuff.
Have you played Grand Theft Auto?
And so I
Yes.
have, but
Can
not.
pets be a self?
Oh, I
yes.
love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My
What'd you say?
days.
I think can pets be a?
Yes!
So
Did you-
Spending time with your pets.
Did you only play GTA 5 in the online, or did you actually play the other GTA games at least?
I'm
or at
gonna
least
bring you
first?
guys back to
Let's
our
focus on
discussion.
this. Yeah.
And that sounds very interesting,
talk
but
about
you
that
can
after.
tell you after. So self-care are the actions and the efforts we make to take care of ourselves. And we look at all these different domains, right? SAMHSA identified, let me see, here we go. SAMHSA identified 8 dimensions of wellness. You have emotional, social, spiritual, intellectual, occupational, financial, environmental, and physical. And all of those areas are gonna overlap. All of those areas are gonna be different for everybody. And one of the things is that connection, that social connection. Some people, I mean, I can tell you, sometimes I don't get along with a lot of other people. Sometimes people can be overwhelming. I'm one of those that I get drained, but I love my cat.
I'm in.
My cat can just, like, we can just sit there and just not have a conversation, we can cuddle. And for some, that could be a form of self-care. It's different for everybody.
Puzzles.
Puzzles,
I love puzzles.
intellectual, games, puzzles, books, reading. There are so many ways that we can engage in self-care. What are some of the barriers to self-care? These are some of the barriers. You have common barriers, time, guilt. Guilt because a lot of people think self-care is selfish.
I could be doing something else.
Or I could be helping somebody else.
Could be helping, yeah, instead of.
I
I
could
mean-
be with somebody else, because sometimes our self-care requires alone time.
People think that you not giving your only food because you're poor to a homeless man on the street, people will say you're selfish, but
Yeah,
no, you're just trying to survive and you should come
Sometimes-
first.
sometimes it's okay to be selfish. Sometimes it's really okay to be selfish, because we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves.
But
We can't help others if we don't take care of ourselves.
we live in a world where if you act selfish once, even if it's for a good reason, you're condemned all the way to the max.
And, sometimes we might need to change the world we live in. Because all of our worlds are the people that we interact in. We've got different circles around us. So maybe that could be a form of self-care. Who do we surround ourselves? Because
Good
if we're
people.
around people that are constantly judging and criticizing you, do we need to be around those people? Can we change that?
There are
Yeah,
some
you can.
instances where you don't have a choice to be around those
Sure.
people. And there are various instances regarding that, like some of them being your only family members.
Okay. And then sometimes we need to work on ourselves, because I have family members like that. And, the truth is, we can't disown family members, right? But sometimes
I don't
I need
You
to,
totally can.
but sometimes I need to
don't
work
have a
on
problem doing
me and say, you know what? I need to do what's right for me. And this is what I believe. And this is what I think, because one day will come where you are going to be the king of your own island, or the queen, right? Depending. You'll be the one in power. So you get to decide how to practice your self-care. You can include others to make sure that we overcome those barriers. These are just some of the things that we can do. Here I have it up here. You matter as your mantra, right? That's that message we keep repeating to ourselves, telling us, I'm valuable, I'm important. And that can be your self-care. That can be part of it. And we're all working towards something. we're just not in this world. And that can be part of your self-care as well, setting those goals. What can you change? What would that look like? What would it take? We always have choices. Let's see. Any questions on barriers or how to practice your self-care?
I don't know if anyone ever mentioned this barrier, but, well, there are emotional barriers, like the ones where, I don't know if this is one, but if you're violating a barrier, if you're choosing not to talk about your problems or letting your problems out, which is the same thing. If you're just squashing them or just putting them inside, like just holding them inside, I don't know how you pronounce it, just pushing those emotions away, just
You
stuffing
impair
them in
that
a box.
motivation. Sometimes your mental health, your diagnosis, your depression impairs your ability to get motivated.
Agreed.
And these are conversations you need to have with your professionals,
You know, a lot of
with your
people
support.
think that if you just push your feelings away and just keep them to yourself and put on a happy smiley face or try to show or pretend that you're strong when you're really not, it really doesn't help. It affects you in the long run.
Everybody's gonna be different. And sometimes our own mental health, our own emotions can keep us from getting motivated and making decisions. Sometimes the steps you need to take can be the hardest. And if you don't have that support,
Sorry, it could also fall under guilt too,
Oh,
because you feel guilty for taking care of yourself.
yeah.
If you don't have a lot of self-worth, you don't believe that you deserve
Mhm.
self-care.
And it's gonna be different for everybody.
With me recently, I was just doing it just because I wanted to impress people and show that I'm actually a strong-willed person. Just, but doing that really hurt me in the long run.
Sometimes we need to really understand why we're doing the things we do. Because if we're doing it for others, that might not always work out. We need to do things for ourselves. That is why it's called self-care. Because taking care of others, we do all the time. We make sure the door's open for you. We pick up if something falls. We contribute. The important thing here and what our focus on is our self-care. So be selfish. Do something that's for you and not for anybody else. But know why you're doing it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So how do you know when you need self-care?
You'll know when you struggle.
You're stressing out.
Yeah, well, no, right? Sometimes it's inside, sometimes it's just, have you ever seen those shows where they do something and then they turn around, they're like, I'm too old for this.
Well, if you're,
Or like, yeah.
well, part of self-care, unfortunately, it results in you like, if you know you're in need of care, sometimes the best, if not the only option is to go see a psychiatrist
Mhm. Yeah,
or go to a mental health clinic. But back then it was just, well, you could just register yourself in a mental institution and then you'll regret it later because they're gonna torture you.
treatment is very different. And yes, sometimes self-care is taking the steps to get the help that you need. When we talk about support, we're talking about professionals as well. Families, friends, people who can be empathetic and understanding and support you, not enable, but support you. Somebody who's going to be telling you, you know what, that's a behavior you shouldn't be doing because it's not safe. And these are the people that are important to you, that their opinion matters. And you know what, maybe I'll take that into account.
If your mindset is of like for one, being paranoid or having paranoia and suspecting everyone of being a threat to you or to whom you support, that could be a type, that's where you need to realize at that point, you need help. And if you're anything like Joseph Stalin in that kind of way, because at one point, I was that paranoid just that recently, so it was then that at that point, you need to realize you need to see a doctor.
There are
Because if you're
certain,
suspecting everyone is a threat, you're the one that needs help, not them.
exactly. And so talking to professionals and everything, who can you call for support?
Immediate.
Well, if
Like if
you're
you had a moment that you really, hey, I need to work on this, or you know what, this is not going good, who is the person that you can call?
Well, if you're feeling suicidal for one, there's a suicide helpline.
988, awesome.
It has its own number.
Close friends, family members.
Close friends, family
My
members,
husband.
your
You
husband,
can? I didn't know that.
mentors,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Who would you
for
call?
those, like, you can't talk
Who would you
about.
call?
I know it's terrible.
You're on the phone with somebody right now, aren't you? Who would you call?
I'm big in my faith, so maybe somebody
Maybe,
from church.
okay, yeah.
I'll call you back.
Yeah.
Call you back. Call you back. Who would you call?
My husband.
Your husband? You don't have somebody you would call?
My wife.
Your mom, your wife? Awesome. Have that somebody, know who that somebody is, because that means something. All of you that identified who you'd call, what does that tell you?
You have some support system.
You have support. You're not alone, right? So know who it is that you call. Now, sometimes we have somebody we'll call for this. Sometimes we have somebody we'll call for that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Know who your support systems are. Don't be afraid to lean on them.
So let me ask you this, when if your only support system, when if, like a hypothetical scenario, if you need support and the only person you call is like, I don't know, your parents or something, when if they're like, I don't want to deal with your problems, I don't want to even talk to you, I got a lot going on, I'm stressed out of this, and that, and the last thing I need to hear is you and your problems.
And I'm
How do
sorry
you
that
deal
some
with that?
people, we find other support.
Well,
There are other
what if you don't
groups.
have any other support?
You have to find somebody. Talk to your professional. If you're seeing a professional, talk to your professional. But sometimes we need to make an effort to find out where are other groups that I can connect with.
There are some people who have it worse, and there are people, I mean, don't have it worse, as in they don't have a support system at all and don't know where to look.
Now, sometimes.
How do you help them?
Sometimes we need to talk to this individual, because I'm gonna tell you, sometimes when I call my husband or my son or my daughter, and I'm telling them, and they might give me the mom, please, that's too much. Sometimes I need to come back and go to the mirror and say, okay, am I being reasonable? What am I doing that people tell me I can't help you, don't have time to deal with you? And how can I change that? Because sometimes it's about changing our behaviors. What are we doing that people respond to us that way? And especially if that's our support system. Because we can't always have it our way. When we deal with stress, when we deal with life issues, this isn't Burger King. You don't get it your way, right?
But
Yes.
at the same time, though, people do have their own boundaries of what they can listen to.
Right.
So it's like at that point, maybe it isn't an issue with myself. I mean, maybe it is, but I at that point would go to a professional, 988 or something. Yeah.
Sometimes we'll get into that discussion. I'll be in front of the mirror and I'll be able to say, you know what, it ain't me, it's them.
Mhm.
So then I need to change them. Maybe I don't come to them anymore.
I thought we said we
Maybe I
can't
find
change
somebody
people.
else. That's what I mean. You need to reflect on you. And if you truly believe, you know what, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, no, then I need to find other support elsewhere. Does that make sense? Now, if there's some, because I have my moments where, you know what, maybe I need to make some adjustments. Maybe that was a little unreasonable. Maybe the issues I brought up don't have to be issues, right? It's different for everybody, but sometimes it takes a step to reflect inside ourselves. Yes.
Expanding your support net is also part of self-care too.
Expanding that support, yeah.
Finding more people to
Finding
confide in.
more people, making those connections. Church,
Student works.
student organizations, student works. Sometimes we find groups of people that have similar issues that we do, and maybe we can connect that way. So some of the key takeaways of today's discussion is, number one, you matter. Number two, you want to prioritize your mental health and your well-being. You come first, but you need to make steps. It's not just something that's given to you. Emotions and feelings have a beginning, middle, and end. Remember that, because that is one of the most important ones. You have to ride that wave to get to where you're going, right? You want to complete that stress cycle. You especially want to know the difference between your stress and distress, because one is good, one motivates, the other can take its toll and can complicate things. And then you want to understand the impact of that stress. Reflect, what can I do? What are some things that I can change? Did you have a question?
Oh, no.
No? Stretching is a good way of self-care too. When you get older, Lord, do you need it?
deep breathing and physical exercise, yoga.
Any questions? We're good?
Very good.
So I want to thank you all for allowing me to come and present. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit and listen and engage in this discussion. My name is Melissa Mitchell, and I do have a QR code. So if you're tax savvy, I would like to see if I could get some evaluations on today's presentation and how we did. And it kind of helps us when we develop future presentations to other groups. So if you can scan the QR code and just complete the survey, it is anonymous, I think.
By evaluations, do you mean diagnosis?
No, not a clinical evaluation. It's telling me, did you like the survey?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a survey, an opinion. What did you think of the survey
Yeah, I
or
like
the
it.
presentation? Awesome. Do you want to do the QR code?
Yeah, I could do it. I actually do have a question,
Sure.
but I don't know if you're willing to answer it or not. You could just keep it to yourself.
Okay.
You said mental health affects everybody.
Mhm.
And I know for a fact that there are plenty of psychiatrists and therapists nowadays that are struggling with mental health issues and help in the mental health field. It's not like back then where it was just narrow-minded and only doctors or mental health doctors are just mentally fine and all that, but the patients are not. Do you have any mental health issues yourself? You diagnosed with anything?
I don't have a diagnosis, but I do have challenges from day to day. Of course. When I say that everybody has mental health, I want people to understand that mental health isn't always bad.
Okay, well,
Mental health can be good.
if there's one thing that technically always bugs me,
Mhm.
and it is the fact that there are still so many people out there that because they're not diagnosed with anything, and they're technically labeled as neurotypicals, it kind of bugs me that they claimed that, oh, I don't ever struggle with mental health. Oh no, I don't deal with mental health issues. No, I'm just fine. I'm normal. Well, technically, if mental health affects everybody, then guess what? It's affecting them too, and they just don't know about it, because I believe any negative or prejudice or any bad behavior is a result of some form of mental health issue.
And the thing is that that's why it's important to have these conversations, to bring that awareness, because people might think mental health, that means, I've learned that people will think to have mental health is because you've been diagnosed, and that's not the case.
Yeah, I can't understand what goes through people's minds when they think that they never suffer through any mental health issues simply because they're not diagnosed with something.
Well, but sometimes,
They just won't
sometimes,
accept that idea that mental health affects everybody, even those who are not diagnosed. They
but
won't
you see,
accept that.
sometimes, one of the things that I do always ask people to consider is that sometimes it's not because of the individual. Me growing up in my family, mental health is not an issue. That's just not allowed.
Yeah.
And so we don't talk about these things, which is part of that stigma. And it's part of the stereotype, because I'm talking about Latinos, Mexicans.
There's a
Mental
good,
health is not a real thing.
that's a thing with Russians today.
And there's different culture. Culture has an influence, and that's something else we need to take into account. So it's very hard when we generalize. We can't generalize.
Am I generalizing?
Yes.
How am I doing that?
When you say, I know a lot of people that have mental health issues, and I know that talking about this doesn't bring awareness, because there are people that just don't care. For some people, there may be. For others, it may not be true. So it's hard to generalize, and that's something that I always caution to try to be careful. Because yes, you're right, there may be individuals that fit certain criteria that may disagree with. Earlier, you brought up the puzzle piece. I just came from an autism training from an individual with lived experience, talking about how law enforcement can help and how we need to change those relations. And he's got a puzzle pillow in his car
Although
to help people identify that he may have limitations in communicating his needs. Or, that he's not typical as anybody else would be. So it's just a matter of differences. All of the symbols, all of the conversations that we have, just like your self-care, what works for you may not work for you, is gonna be different.
So
So
you're,
it's hard to generalize.
so you're saying I'm generalizing people who don't have mental health diagnosis as being always
In
stigma.
some of the statements you made, you generalized a little bit. And that's okay, maybe you didn't mean to. And that's probably what you didn't mean. But sometimes some statements come up as a generalization. And we can only talk about our personal.
A lot of
what
it comes,
you believe.
a lot of it comes from personal hatred of those who don't respect mental health and those who don't respect autism. So I'm coming from years of hatred. towards a certain
So that, and that might be something you want to talk about. That might be something you want to find someone that you can talk to about. Because hatred's not good in any level.
Okay,
That contributes
It's
to that
understandable.
stress. It's understandable.
Totally get it.
Oh, yeah, it's understandable to see that, but I guess my question would be, do you really have control over all those other people?
well, never claim I did and never will.
So what do you do have control over?
Myself, and I had people in the past call me a prejudice or some sort of
Are you?
terrorist. No, I'm not.
So, yeah,
So then.
that's what I
those are
mean,
very
sometimes
useful words.
we need to think like, okay, they call me prejudice. Well, what did I say that could have been prejudice? What, did I say something? And after you, because you know who you are. You know what you do. And if you can say, you know what, oh, I did say this, maybe I need to change that. Maybe I can change that and maybe this won't happen again. But if you can say, you know what, I didn't say anything, then you're good.
Okay,
And maybe you need to find somebody else, some other support. And those are hard steps to take, but that is very important because that is part of your self-care. Who do you surround yourself with?
Get some feedback from, maybe tell them what you said, and be like, hey, does any of this sound prejudiced? And then get some feedback from somebody, be like, hey, well, this maybe sounds a little bit like this, and you could have maybe reworded it, but you have to find somebody that you can trust, that you trust their opinion.
Yeah,
I trust all of you because we're all part of the same community.
Yeah.
That's why I attended this place.
thank you, yeah. Well, I'm glad, and I'm hoping that everybody here can make connections that'll be supportive. And you do get to choose who you allow to support you. And that doesn't mean that they're not in your lives ever again, but you get to choose if you listen to them or not. And you get to choose who you want to have that conversation with. So there's always a choice, but sometimes we just need to go out and find the right people.
Yeah.
And that might take work. So, thank you all, I do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Yeah, we're sure.
Thank you, Melissa. No, thank you, I appreciate being here. Thank you all for coming. By the way,
Yes, I have played some of the MBTAs, and I also used to play online. I do a lot of online.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of online games.
I don't like interacting with very negative people, so.
Yeah, there's just so many toxic people, even on GTA Online.